Hello and welcome to the Global Dialogue. I'm Shireen Bhan and my guest today is the Global CEO of Mastercard, Michael Miebach. Thanks very much for joining us here on CNBC-TV18. What a pleasure to have you in India and on the program, your first visit as CEO of Mastercard. And you picked quite the week as we celebrate 75 years of our independence.
Picking that week was by design, so I'm delighted to be here, delighted to be on the show with you. There were choices when to come, and I couldn't think of a more auspicious week, actually, than to join the celebrations. I did find, though, that it's also a week of vacation. So,
yes,
it was
plenty of vacation.
A little bit of flexibility was required, but a fantastic visit. Got a really good sense of everything that's going on in India.
So let me ask you for a pulse check on India today. Right. You've had meetings with your clients, with your customers, with your team, and of course with government officials as well. As you leave India, in comparison to the sense that you had about the economy, about your business here, about Mastercard's plans for India in 2018, which was when you last visited, give me a pulse and a mood check on where things currently stand.
A almost physical sense of optimism. I mean, it's probably helped by the fact that you look back on 75 years and then all the achievements, but my reference point was really the visit 4 years ago in 2018. What I see today, particularly through the lens of our business, when we look at the digital economy and how it's growing in India and the growth rates of UPI and so forth, there is technology put to work at scale in unprecedented ways in India. And as a tech company and as a tech geek, I find that hugely exciting. So I'm going to go back and see there's models emerging in India that we should all think about and see what else we can do and how we evolve our business in partnerships with fintechs and other companies that are using this technology here in India. That was the conversation at the dinner tables last night here in the hotel.
So I just want to take that point forward. From your strategy of buy, build, or sort of partner, where does India fit into that strategy currently, and what is it going to mean in terms of future investments?
So let me just say a few things. We're not a credit card company to start with, so let's just...
I think that transition you've been on for the last couple of years.
Let's just baseline on that. So as a payment technology company, we kind of broadly speaking, what we do, our strategy is be in payments, whatever choice of payments is there. Like India is offering a lot more choice in payments than was there even 5 years ago. So it might have been cards, and now it's UPI, it's account-to-account, it's push payments. You want it, you have it in India. So we want to offer solutions in all those spaces. That's our stated strategy. It's different in different countries, and here in India, certainly there's more choice and bid there for that. But then that's also the question. So if you have that rapidly rising digital economy with all these different payment choices for people, how do you keep it safe? How do you keep it simple? That's another part of our strategy, where we say every kind of service that makes this simple, address the cyber risks, is your digital identity compromised, all those kind of things we take care of, and we then partner. And that comes to the partnership point. We say, on payments, there's a lot of partnerships required, for example, on nascent areas of payments, B2B payments. There's a lot of inefficiency in B2B payments, which we bring solutions to the party. Basic P2P payments, here in India, UPIs are an amazing success. We don't really need to partner on that, but the question on cybersecurity and how do you make sure that these payments remain safe as this becomes one of the, if not the largest digital economy in the world, that's a partnership area. Then you go into some of the big questions that India is addressing that many other countries will face, and that's the question of an inclusive digital economy. Hundreds of millions of people. We think there's going to be 100 million people that join the formal digital economy in India in the next couple of years. Who else? How do you do this? And what partnerships are required? We've been on a financial inclusion trip for years. I ran our Africa business. That's why I got really in tune with that topic, and I think there's amazing drive here on that. There's technology developed here, but we also have experience that we can bring to the party. So all sorts of partnerships across the board. And in my conversation with our employees here, look at us, where's it going? Where's the puck going? What else can we bring to India's journey to make that digital India vision a reality.
So where is the puck going? You know, especially in the context of financial inclusion, voice commerce, for instance. I know that this is something that you talk about and this is something that you believe in as well. What kind of innovations can we expect out of India that can possibly be exportable?
I think in the end where it's going to go, pay every which way you want, whenever you want, always on the basis of it's safe and secure. So I think that's the headline. And you know, that turns out in many different ways. It's going to be paying in the metaverse. It's going to be paying through voice. It's going to be paying offline in areas of the country where you have no GSM coverage or it's not as good as it needs to be. So every bit of technology that's there today is going to give us a huge boost because all that is at disposal in India. So I wouldn't think there's one particular technology. My general answer on when I think about the future of payments and the future of technology is convergence of a lot of fundamental underlying technologies, AI, 5G or 6G, cloud, edge computing, all of that will make sure that you can do whatever you want whenever you want it in terms of payments at all times. This is converging, gives you all sorts of data. I think the question of trust and security is really the most important in a digital economy. Imagine that small business that is reopening the doors after COVID, and then now they have a digital business because they felt that during COVID that was a thing, and now they're going to operate in a different way than they had before, but they have not learned how to keep their business safe. That trust issue, if something goes wrong, that's going to be a problem, not only for that one business, because people talk, and then the whole small and micro businesses, I think are not going to take all the potential from the digital economy. So trust and security is super important. That's what we stand for, what we bring. And it was a good part of the conversations with government as well here.
You know, just sort of looking not just at India, but at the regulatory environment around the world, and specifically about the regulatory environment here in India. It's been a challenging year and a half or so. You know, the RBI didn't allow you to onboard customers because of the data storage rules, which changed. You now have the ability to do that again. But what impact did that have on your business? And, you know, how do you potentially de-risk yourself from matters like this going forward?
Right. Shireen, I'd like to take your cue and look at the world, and then we come to India on this. So basically what we're seeing in the digital economy is, at the intersection of financial services and digital economy, is regulators that want to ensure sanctity of the system, resilience of the system, effectiveness of monetary policy, and so forth. And then you have fintechs, you have new technology coming in. And how do you bring these two worlds together? Because you want innovation. At the same time, you want stability and you want security. And that's what a lot of the conversation, the school of regulators, there's increasing connectivity. The BIS is bringing the central banks together. They're all talking to each other. And we're an active part of that dialogue where we say we're kind of somewhere in the middle. We are the largest fintech around, but also we're not at the bleeding edge, we're at the leading edge. And I think we can bring a perspective in the middle. What we've seen here in India is a lot of that new technology being deployed, and I think the market oftentimes is ahead of the regulator, as in saying, we'll try this out. So regulatory clarity on emerging topics around the world, we see it in crypto, for example, and blockchain is not quite there yet. So that active dialogue to bring that there. Here what we had is we had challenging 10 months in India for sure, but we resolved the matter with the RBI, cooperative, open dialogue, and we think we are now exactly where the country needs to go, and now we're engaging the market again. And what was really rewarding is the keenness of the market participants and customers to reach out again and say, okay, so what can we do together? So that's behind us. We look forward, and we're excited about where this is going to go here in India in terms of this digital economy.
So, you know, I am going to try and elicit a number from you in terms of what it could mean in terms of fresh investments for India, given the fact that you're so confident about the growth story here. So potentially, what could we see?
Right. So, you know, first of all, let me tell you a little bit about how important India is for Mastercard. So it's a big business, but everything that we just covered on what is being built in terms of a digital economy here, this has model character. So I look at this as like, in a fishbowl, there's like this big fish that's circling, and that is India. And then a lot of people are going to look into this fishbowl and say, that's a model. That's interesting. We might be seeing more, global stack kind of ideas elsewhere. So from that perspective, it's important. We have been investing, and we've been on the record here in India to say, $2 billion that we will be investing in the country, and we're just executing against that in R&D, in people, in solutions, in technology. This is the reason I have to cover 4 cities in 3 days, is because I'm going to see all of that and make sure that we are on track and understand where things are going. So from an investment and resource allocation perspective, we are just reflecting the importance of India that we believe is being drawn up in terms of this digital future. Mm-hmm. The
talk of recession is gaining momentum across different economies at this point in time, whether we talk about the US or UK or the slowdown in China. And typically that hasn't impacted your business. Previous downturns haven't necessarily impacted your business. But as you look at the risks that are playing out for various economies today, how do you ring fence yourself?
So I resisted using the R word in our last conference call with the analysts and investors. And frankly, that's for a reason. If we think back about the financial crisis, 2008, 2009, if you look at the state of the world then, vis-a-vis the state of the world, we don't have an asset bubble. What we have, on the other hand, is we have high, strong employment. I mean, unemployment numbers have gone down since pre-crisis, so we are in good shape. We have had many stimulus programs here in India, the US, and Europe that went to individual consumers. The consumer balance sheet is much stronger than it was back then. So if you then look at that underlying thing, yes, there is pressure on energy prices, there's pressure on air tickets, we just talked about that. So there's some inflationary pressures, but you also have more decisive actions from central bankers around the world who are stepping in to halt the inflation or prevent a further increase. So gives and takes, puts and takes around inflation. And I've not yet said the R word, and I will not. So we'll see.
So you don't believe we're headed? You don't believe we're headed into a recession?
In the short term, we are seeing that inflationary pressure will prevail, but the actions that central banks are taking, we believe, will take hold. So then it's important to think, if we make the bridge to our business, not everything that is driving inflation is reflected in our business, because where digital payments generally happen, the types of digital payments that we do is oftentimes not in rent, for example. It's oftentimes not in types of energy prices when it comes to utility payments for natural gas or things like that. So our basket vis-a-vis the overall CPE is a different kind of basket. And hence there's why there's some cushioning happening as well. Fundamentally, as price levels increase, there's a short-term benefit in volumes, but that is something that is generally passing, because overall, if inflation prevails for a longer time, it's not good for anybody. So we believe that the government actions that are being taken, particularly by the central banks, are showing effect. We see it in the United States. You see it in India. Actually, your inflation rates come down.
I just want to get a sense from you in terms of growth, both organic as well as inorganic. And you've done a plethora of acquisitions. Right. Given the spaces that you want to occupy and the areas that you want to consolidate in, what are the gaps currently that you're looking at that you would like to plug via inorganic growth or acquisitions?
Yeah. So we're always, there's investors that were looking around and said, well, fintech, valuations are depressed. This is an opportunity to go in and buy X, Y, Z. Our starting point is we have a strategy, want to provide all the payment choices that are relevant, have a set of services around it to make these payments better. That's the starting point. So where are the gaps? Or rather, where's the opportunity? So I'll give you one recent example. We closed on an acquisition of a company by the name of Dynamic Yield in April this year. So a lot of businesses right now, as they come out of the stress of COVID, are trying to re-engage consumers, airlines, retailers, and so forth. So how do you do that? You could do mass emails, but that's so 80s, so nobody does that any longer. But how can I get hyper-personalized content that tells you, Shireen, here's what you said you like, and here's the offer at this moment in time. Oftentimes it's related to a payments journey, because the payment will indicate what you have previously bought and all of that. So you bring all of this together, sets of data, preferences, and so forth, and then the moment in time, super contextual, hyper-personalized offers, and saying, at the right moment, here's your thing.
Yeah.
That's what Dynamic Yield does. It's a company that does that. So in the conversation with customers here in the market, everybody's re-engaging and trying to see, I want to be top of mind. I want to be in the customer's mind and say that my offer is a particularly relevant offer. People don't think about Mastercard in that context, but that is what we do. I'm delighted with this particular acquisition. So more value before and after the payment transaction is kind of the headline. That's where we're looking. And then the whole space of B2B that I touched on earlier. Massive momentum in the B2B space, a lot of specialists there. More and more companies look at this as a source of value as they try to optimize their back office processes. Large conglomerates here in India, we're having these conversations as how do you make this easier? How do you use payment flows as a basis to get better credit access for medium-sized companies that are not getting that? So providing that data back to a financier, which we don't do, those are all activities that are going on, and those are all very hot spaces.
You know, as a global digital payments company today,
right.
if the previous,
I like how you put that. Thank you.
if the previous decade or more than that was really about doing away with cash and moving to a cashless economy. And you're very clear that you don't believe that cards are going to be the future. When do we get to a card?
They will be part of the future.
Part of the future, but do you see a card-less future?
I think in the end, a card is a form factor, which I love. It really works really very seamlessly. But it's a credential. It's a tokenized credential of you and your financial identity, and it links to an account of some sort. And I think we will keep that. Some sort of identifier that goes back to the individual and say, this is my financial means and this is where my data is associated and so forth. The form factor it could be mobile, it could be anything. It could be completely biometric without a device. So that's a somewhat scary thought, but it could be. We've just launched something that is essentially facial biometric payment. So you pay with your smile. And that's not futuristic talk. It's actually a reality, and it's safe and secure. We launched it in 2014 initially. I think we were ahead of the time, a little too far ahead of the time, but it's coming back now. So pay with your smile. Why not? So I think that is where these things are going.
But, you know, in India, we currently don't have a data protection or a data privacy law. Right. So does that challenge offerings like this?
I think we have to be very, very careful about data and very thoughtful about data. So your data should be yours. You should benefit from it and nobody else. And for a company like ours, we should keep it safe. By the way, those are exactly our data principles. That's how we operate. Data compliance, regulatory compliance is important, but the coordination and level of data regulation around the world is not yet in line with the market. Back to our earlier conversation, sometimes technology in the market is ahead. We try to be the adult in the room and make sure that we bridge that gap and don't be on the bleeding edge and drive that. But I think there's an interesting conversation around how is data an element of innovation vis-a-vis data privacy is in the way of innovation? And I think technology allows us to do this today. For example, tokenization is an interesting one. Here in India, we have partnered with the RBI to drive tokenization. So that's a one-time number that safeguards your underlying payment details. And it can fly around the net. That is an element of data privacy, leveraging latest technology to make that work so you can bridge the gap between keeping data private and secure and for your benefit vis-a-vis blocking innovation because you want to be just think about security. So that's, I think, where the journey is going. Regulation, coordination, global coordination, that's a dialogue we have, at the G20 level, at the national level with the EU, who's been a leader in, with GDPR and regulations like that to take some of these standards and put them elsewhere. We actually made it a global standard for our company.
You talked about working with the RBI on tokenization. The RBI has just last night put out a discussion paper. I don't know if you've had a look at it or not, but on all kinds of things, on regulating MDR and so on and so forth. Any thoughts on that, preliminary thoughts on that?
It's breaking. We had this customer dinner here last night, and somebody came to me, hey, Michael, have you read that? And I hadn't read it at the time, so I just glanced over this morning. I find the thought process behind that and asking the kind of questions that were asked are the right kind of questions. They come to a point that I mentioned earlier. It's not just about the technology. It's about the broader ecosystem and the kind of questions that are being asked about commercial sustainability, because commercial sustainability often links into innovation. So I quite like that consultation process. So we will certainly be engaging with the RBI and say, here's our experience and what we've seen and what we think can work here in India.
You mentioned where the puck goes a couple of times in the course of the conversation. I thought you might say where the ball goes. Because rumor has it that you're going to be placing a pretty big bet on something that unites all Indians, cricket.
Right, the national passion. I heard about that rumor, yes.
Are you going to confirm that or not?
Well, so I say a few things. Sponsorships and passion, it's just something that works for us. The term priceless, when you think about UEFA Champions League, there's so many priceless moments. In cricket, there's so many priceless moments, so it's just a natural fit to us. Whatever is a national pastime, we're always interested. So there's active interest, so we're engaging. It's a potential opportunity, but it is a potential opportunity. So this is about as much as I can say right now, but I'm very keen and interested on these kind of national sponsorship.
Do you follow cricket at all, though?
So I actually played this one time. The playing is probably the wrong word. I tried it one time. I lived in the Middle East for a long time, had a lot of Indian colleagues, and we went out to a cricket thing. And it struck me that it's weird to throw a ball on the floor because, I grew up with soccer. That's not what you do. But if you just see the lit up faces and the passion around the sport, it's just fascinating. So we want to be associated with it.
Well, let me end by asking you, Michael, you've spoken about your strategic priorities in expanding value-added services, on expanding networks, and of course digital payments. Where do you believe you are in that journey? How much have you been able to accomplish so far, and what would you prioritize in terms of the unfinished agenda?
Right. So there is no end in the agenda, so it will always be unfinished. But I tell you today, more than a third of our revenue comes from services. So versus 10 years ago, we were largely in consumer-related payments. Today, services that are in cyber data analytics make up more than 1/3 of the company. So that's a massive, massive progress. But also the mix in payments has also changed quite dramatically. Originally consumer payments, now B2B, prepaid, cross-border payments, you name it. It is a whole menu. Everything that is relevant is on the menu, and the diversification has shown. You just talked about our earnings call. That is shown that we've built a fairly resilient, diversified business that can even sustain an unprecedented pandemic. So I think always more to do, but we've come a long way.
Well, we wish you the very best of luck. Thanks so much for joining us here in India, and we hope to have you back soon.
Thank you, Shane.
Well, with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of the Global Dialogue. From all of us here on the team, goodbye and many thanks.